It's April 14th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Davi. We begin with the stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with a new tariff warning from the Trump administration. U.S. President Donald Trump has made it clear that tariffs on iPhones and other Chinese-made devices are still in place, and that new duties are on the way. South Korea saw snow and strong wind over the weekend, with the capital, Seoul, seeing its heaviest April snow in 81 years. Spring warmth will be back on Wednesday. At least 34 people were killed in a Russian missile attack on the heart of the Ukrainian city of Sumy as people got together for church services on Sunday. The U.S. slammed Russia, saying the attack on civilian targets crosses any line of decency. U.S. President Donald Trump has settled the debate over tariffs on select electronics, saying exemption of items, tariffs on those items are temporary, and that separate tariffs on goods, including smartphones, will be unveiled in the coming weeks. Our Lee Seung-jae starts us off.
U.S. President Donald Trump and his key trade officials on Sunday made it clear that his administration's newly announced exemptions for reciprocal tariffs on electronic products would be partially or completely reversed in the coming weeks. After a technical guidance issued late Friday, Washington issued an exemption on select electronics such as smartphones, laptops, personal computers, servers, and semiconductor equipment. Not only does this ease the burden on Samsung Electronics and Apple, it also means a possible exemption from some of the levies on Chinese imports. However, Trump took to his social media page on Sunday to clarify, saying tariffs would still be imposed on Chinese goods, specifically the existing 20% fentanyl tariffs. Trump also stressed that the U.S. administration is taking a look at semiconductors and the whole electronics supply chain in upcoming national security tariff investigations. According to U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, while there may be some tariff exemptions on select electronics now, a separate tariff on semiconductors is coming.
So what he's doing is he's saying they're exempt from the reciprocal tariffs, but they're included in the semiconductor tariffs, which are coming in probably a month or two. So these are coming soon.
Speaking to CNN on Sunday, White House National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett said that items subject to Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act have always been excluded from the reciprocal tariffs, and a separate investigation will be conducted to determine the necessary measures to protect the United States. He added that the tariff investigation into semiconductors has to do with broader concerns of U.S. dependence on Chinese-made imports. Hassett said that there is a very uncomfortable amount of Chinese input in U.S. weapons systems, stressing the importance of Section 232 of the Act. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The South Korean government has called on Washington to ease measures against South Korean copper imports, stressing that restrictions could hinder South Korean investments in the U.S. The request comes as the U.S. Department of Commerce launched an investigation last month under Section 232 of the 1962 Trade Expansion Act to assess the national security implications of imports of copper and copper derivative products. Section 232 specifically allows the U.S. president to impose import restrictions if imported goods pose a threat to national security. South Korea's Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy stressed that South Korean copper products are not a threat, but contribute positively to the U.S. economy and supply chain stability. It added that copper tariffs could harm U.S. security and economy by increasing prices, weakening the competitiveness of U.S. manufacturers and cause supply chain disruption. The first criminal trial for former President Yoon Suk Yeol, who's facing insurrection charges, just began at 10 a.m. at the Seoul Central District Court. Yoon arrived at the court this morning as he is required to be at the trial in person. Two key witnesses, including Jo Sung-hyun from the Army's Capital Defense Command, are expected to testify at the hearing that will be held behind closed doors. Jo earlier testified at the Constitutional Court back in February that he was ordered to send troops to drag lawmakers out of parliament on the night of the martial law order. Monday's trial comes just 10 days after the 64-year-old former leader was removed from office. Now, if convicted, he could face a life imprisonment or even the death penalty. South Korea is officially on the hunt for a new president after the court's dismissal of now former President Yoon Suk Yeol. What kind of leader do the South Korean people want, and what kind of leadership does the country need? Let's turn to Professor Mason Ricci. Good morning.
Good morning.
So a new poll says the number one task for a new president, according to South Korean people, is economic recovery and vitalization. Why the economy?
Yeah, so, I think that there's a number of things that might explain that. I think probably the first one is that, to some degree, there's probably been, at least in the short term, a kind of lowering of the temperature politically, ever since the Constitutional Court decision, and perhaps a sense among the broad part of the population, definitely among the Democratic Party of Korea, supporters, and I think also for the moderates and the independents, that the democratic process here more or less worked, and so perhaps it's easy to sort of paper over some of the deep fissures that still remain here. So there's, I think, been a little bit of an acceptance of the ruling by the criminal court. And then, of course, both parties, both major parties have to begin to turn towards the presidential election, which means, in the case of the Democratic Party, moving forward with the program that they want to put into place. And if you're the PPP, you have to sort of balance, making some gestures to your base who probably want to relitigate some of the martial law impeachment issue, but also putting forth a positive vision for the country as a whole, because there really is, a thirst out there among Korea, as a whole. It's like a long distance runner, who needs a Pocari drink to revitalize and rehydrate afterwards. There's really a sense that South Korea needs to top up and move forward in a positive direction.
Right, so economic recovery on top of list. Now, number two job to work on is, according to the poll, a national integration and a conflict resolution. Professor Ricci, what kind of national integration and conflict resolution do the South Korean people want, do you think?
So, if I'm going to be cynical on that, I would say that, to some degree, both sides want the other side to capitulate to what they want, right? I mean, that's the integration that you would like to have, would be that your side wins and the other side loses, and your side gets to push through what it wants, and the other side will accept it. And that's not a very positive thing to think, and to some degree, it contradicts what I just said about the sense that South Korea is looking to move past some of these political issues. But I think that there is a little bit of a schizophrenia here. On the one hand, that people are looking forward to certain measures that they want to see government put in place to make their lives better, while they all do also sense that there are some deep political polarization issues here in the country. I think that to answer your question in a less cynical way, there's a diffuse sense in this country, I think, that things should just be going quote unquote better, whatever that means. That might be the birth rate long term. That might be work-life balance. That might be polarization. That might be the pressure that people feel socially and culturally. And I think that there's a sense here in a sort of diffuse way, in different ways, of course, among different populations, that things need to be better, and that perhaps the politicians here have not done enough to push that forward. Politicians can't solve these problems. A lot of these problems need to come from changes among the population itself, in terms of being better about where it is that people get their political information and how important politics is in our everyday lives. But of course, politicians can also, I think, help this by not inflaming that polarization, which they unfortunately do all too often for electoral reasons.
They can definitely lead by example. Now, the president that people want is a leader who can revitalize the economy, like we mentioned. But what are the qualities, abilities, and virtues that the people and the Republic of Korea need in the next president?
Sure. So I think I would answer this question sort of differentiating between what it is that perhaps I think is needed versus what it is that the people might actually want.
Right.
I think, as I said, to some degree, at least hardcore supporters on both sides really want a leader who can crush the other side and cause it to capitulate. But I don't think that's what's needed. I think what's needed among the political class, and especially among the very elite leaders, and obviously the president, whoever that's going to be, starting on June 3rd, is compromise, moderation, a capacity for both dealing with short-term urgent issues, but also marrying that with long-term strategy. And indeed setting the country on a pathway for the time after that person, that president, or the group of elites will be in office. Someone who's fair-minded, someone who has an ability to listen to both sides and take both sides into account in terms of the things that they're looking for. Flexibility, of course. The world is in a moment of profound change and transformation, and also a clean record. And I have to say that's one of the things that clearly seem like it's a black mark against Lee Jae-myung. And we'll see if the PPP manages to exploit that through whichever candidate they nominate.
That is a list of qualities for an ideal leader, Professor Ricci. Now, we are now seeing some prominent figures jump into the election race. Now, starting with the Democratic Party of Korea, what are some of the tasks and challenges that the DP must overcome in order to win this election?
Yeah, that's obviously a long list in some respects, but I think the short answer to that is it's the DP's election to lose. Unless they shoot themselves in the foot, they should be able to win this, at least based on the polling data that we see now. I think, if I were advising the Democratic Party here, I would tell them that whoever it is that they select should be someone, with a clean record. I think it should be someone, who has flexibility in terms of the economic challenges that the country faces, someone who, can navigate a difficult environment between an erratic United States and a highly problematic and predatory China, someone who's going to, build for a strong national defense to confront and to deter North Korea. I think that those are the things that I would tell the DP to look towards, and we'll see whether or not they manage to pull that together and have a narrative that does that. I think, of course, the main thing that the DP is probably going to try to do simply not shoot themselves in the foot, try not to get in the way of the PPP's infighting, which is likely to be the case as it goes through its electoral process as well.
Well, what for the PPP then? I mean, how should the People Power Party recover, from the impeachment ruling, all the political drama, and what position do you think it should have in the presidential election?
So, I said, I think it was last week when I was on here that, the main thing that the PPP needs to do is to move forward, turn the page on martial law, turn the page on the impeachment, turn the page on Yoon Suk Yeol's removal from office, provide a positive agenda going forward, acknowledge with humility the problems that led to the martial law, the impeachment, and Yoon's removal from office, and put forth a candidate who can appeal to moderate and independent voters, while also not alienating Yoon Suk Yeol's more hardcore supporters. That's obviously a really tough task, and frankly speaking, they haven't done it really. From the discourse that we've seen from the party so far, they've tried to relitigate parts of the impeachment process. They've tried to brand the Democratic Party of Korea as a threat to democracy, which is clearly going to fall flat considering what just happened with the martial law episode and the impeachment and removal from office by Yoon that followed on that. So if I were advising them, I would tell them, to cut off, knock off the relitigation of the impeachment and look forward. And we've seen Oh Se-hoon, who represented a possible strand of doing so, pull out of the race really before he entered it. Now we're seeing, some discussion perhaps of Han Bok-soo, who has at least a little bit of the profile in terms of being a centrist and someone who could appeal to the middle and someone who's known for integrity. But it looks like the party is not very enthusiastic about him running. So we'll have to see who it is that the PPP manages to put forward to tick all of those boxes. But it's obviously a very tough thing to do to both appeal to moderates and independents while also satisfying the base.
Indeed. Professor Ritchie, it was good to see you again this morning. Thank you as always for your insight.
Thank you for having me.
Winter has made an unexpected return to South Korea as Seoul experienced mid-April snow for the first time in over 8 decades over the weekend. The cold weather is expected to last for a few more days. Bae-eun-ji has this report.
Snow piled up on flowers and trees as South Korea experienced unseasonably cold mid-April weather. Over 10 centimeters of snow accumulated in parts of Gangwon-do province on Sunday. Light snow and hail also fell in the capital area as it went through an unusual spring chill. Snow of up to 0.6 centimeters was recorded in central Seoul between Saturday night and Sunday morning, making it the first time in 81 years that the city saw snow in April. This is mainly because of cold Arctic air passing through the Korean peninsula. The weather turned turbulent as the lingering cold air from above clashed with a mild spring breeze on the ground, causing gusty winds and hail. And strong winds battered the country over the weekend, leading to widespread damage. In Jeju, the winds damaged roofs and toppled trees. And in Busan, winds of up to 30 meters per second brought down signboards and caused power outages. Also in the capital area at Incheon Airport, a tug vehicle crashed into an aircraft on the ground, leading to flight delays. The National Weather Service says strong winds and falling temperatures are forecast for the coming days.
Damage from strong winds is expected until Monday, and temperatures will start to go up from Wednesday. We're expecting to see temperatures return to normal starting late this week.
Rain or snow is expected across the country until Tuesday, before spring warmth returns later this week. Bae-eun-ji, Arirang News.
We often hear about how Korean culture is putting Korea on the map, but here's a story of an illustrator who is quite literally putting Korea on a map. Our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin tells us more.
You know Gwanghwamun Gate, but you've never seen it quite like this. This is how UK-based map artist Jenny Sparks reimagined one of Seoul's most iconic landmarks. For over a decade, her hand-drawn maps have covered major cities across the West, such as London, New York, Paris, and Berlin. Now she's turning her creative compass toward Asia, starting with Seoul.
Like the traditional architecture is extremely different from all the cities that I've done before. I think also like the actual geography of the place, it's very like mountainous, including in like the middle of the city.
This idea sparked when Seol Jae-woo, who runs a local tour business in Seoul, reached out to Sparks a few years ago.
Maps are usually seen as just information, useful in the moment, but often forgotten after. Jenny Sparks' map, however, felt like a work of art. So I thought, what if we could create a map people would treasure, one that tells a story of the place they live?
That question led to Sparks creating a map of Seoul's Seocheon neighborhood before setting her sights on the entire city. It's halfway done, but already you can see what makes her maps so unique. It's not just the pop art style design or the bold use of color, but the sheer level of detail, including hidden gems like Tongin Market in Jongno-gu district. That insight comes from her rigorous research, her first and most important step through books and videos. She then sketches out the bones of the city, rivers, mountains, parks, and metro lines before layering in Seoul's soul.
I will usually ask people from that city and say, is this right? Or like, take a look at this. Is there anything you're like, this is absolutely wrong? Like, no, what you've forgotten this building, or this is this is a really famous cafe, this is a really famous restaurant you have. And then right at the end, it's just kind of just drawing like lots of residential buildings. And
it's a challenging process that takes months, but the map in the end becomes something more than directions. It becomes a story, one you can hold in your hands and revisit. 송유진, Arirang News.
Now, let's take a look at some stories from around the world with our Choi Ji-hee. Good morning, Ji-hee.
Good morning, Tommy.
So, Ji-hee, let's begin in Ukraine. A Russian missile attack has killed and injured dozens in the Sumy region. You have the updates.
Yes, a Russian missile strike hit a Ukrainian city of Sumy, resulting in at least 34 deaths and over 100 injuries. The attack occurred during Palm Sunday celebrations, marking one of the deadliest assaults on civilians in Ukraine this year. On Sunday at approximately 10:15 a.m. local time, 2 Russian ballistic missiles struck the city as residents gathered for Palm Sunday services. The missiles hit a trolley bus and the Sumy State University Congress Center, where a children's theater performance was underway. The attacks killed at least 34 people, including 2 children, and injured 117 others, among them 15 children. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called the strike a deliberate act of terror and pushed for a stronger international response, including additional military support. In the Middle East, an Israeli airstrike has damaged Al Ali Arab Hospital in Gaza City, one of the last remaining fully operational medical facilities in Gaza. In the early hours of Sunday local time, Israeli missiles struck the Al Ali Arab Hospital, reportedly destroying the emergency room, outpatient clinic, and pharmacy. Surrounding buildings, including a nearby church, have also been damaged. The Israeli military said that the strike targeted a Hamas command center operating within the hospital. Before the strike, Israel issued an evacuation warning. However, a young girl suffering a head injury reportedly died during the rushed evacuation. The United States and Iran held indirect nuclear talks in Muscat, Oman, over the weekend, marking the highest-level meeting between the two nations since 2018. The discussions focused on Iran's nuclear program and the possibility of sanctions relief and were mediated by Oman. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi described the atmosphere as productive, calm, and positive, while U.S. officials echoed similar sentiments. Both sides agreed to reconvene for further discussions on April 19th. At the last meeting 7 years ago, President Donald Trump pulled the U.S. out of a nuclear agreement between Iran and world powers, saying he would make a better deal. Finally, Bangkok has officially kicked off the 2025 Songkran Festival, Thailand's traditional New Year celebration known for major water fights. The festival, which runs from April 13th to 16th and involves the world's biggest water fight, symbolizes renewal and cleansing. Participants engage in spirited water battles across the city during the period. Key locations such as Silom Road, Khaosan Road, and Siem Square have become epicenters of activity, and an 8% increase in foreign visitors during the celebration week is anticipated. The festival marks the end of the dry season and the start of a new agricultural cycle.
It looks like Mother Nature has a bit more of a blustery story for us today. We're expecting more rain and even some snow across the country. So if you're heading out, grab that umbrella and warmer jacket. The rainfall will be between 5 and 20 millimeters throughout the day today. Meanwhile, most of the inland areas could expect to see 1 to 5 centimeters of snowfall. Mountainous regions in Gangwon-do province could receive up to 8 centimeters with a heavy snow advisory advisory being issued there. And it's just not the rain and snow. The wind is really picking up too. If you're planning on flying or taking a ferry, make sure to check the latest travel information. It's definitely feeling much colder out there. We're only expecting highs of around 10 degrees Celsius in the capital, Gwangju, at 12 degrees. Looking ahead, we should see the cold air move out, with temperatures returning to more typical spring levels by Wednesday afternoon. But for today, that chilly wind will make it feel even colder, so please bundle up warmly.
That is all we have for this morning. Thank you so much for watching and have a lovely start to the week.